Finally! For the first time in like 2 weeks, I have like decent lighting for recording. It's not raining outside. Hello there, writerly friend. Greetings from scenic California, where it's not raining for the first time in ever. Aren't you happy that it's raining? Weren't you in a drought? Listen, I live by the sea, so the idea of a drought was always a little silly to me. You don't want water? There's plenty of water over there. What, Max? That's not how irrigation works? Shh. Anyhow, man, I can't wait for people to like 2 years down the road watch this video and go, what the heck are they talking about? Don't worry about it. Anyhow, hello there, writerly friend. Welcome back to Max's Writer's Life Vlogs, where I talk about my own process. I talk a little bit about what I did this week, writing, editing, and so forth, and I also offer a little bit of writing advice or inspiration along the way. This week, I'm going to be talking really briefly about what I did, because spoilers, wasn't very exciting. I was talking about the weather 2 minutes ago. I think that was way more exciting than my week. But other than that, I'm also going to be talking about the idea of regaining inspiration or writing even though the world around you may be getting in the way. Wow, are we catching some symmetry between this main subject and my week? Maybe, but anyhow, let's dive right in. My week is gonna be really easy to report on. Nothing happened. Nothing very exciting happened. I pushed along a couple more projects. I got these many chances to write, and I want to talk a little bit more about that in the next segment. But for the time being, on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being sucks and 10 being not sucks, almost kind of amazing, my week was like a 6.35, repeating. Can you even repeat with the 5? I don't think you can. But anyhow, yeah, that was basically my life. I did a lot of editing, I did a lot of prepping things that are not very exciting, but there are still things for like the channel and the website and stuff like that. Really random thing, a video game developer actually sent me a key for their game. That's crazy. They're like, hey, if you want to do a let's look at the game, here's a free key, and I'm like, I do like Arcane games. They are pretty nice to me, so I may work on that. I don't know, it's weird because like, I do the analysis of story within video games. So when someone is like, hey, play our game for free, and I'm like, keep talking. With that silliness out of the way, what was my week? Work, not exciting work, and a few interesting things along the way. With that being said, let's actually talk about the main subject. I know that I have a lot to say about this particular thing, so let's take it from the top. So, the main subject of today came to me from a question that I received through Tumblr. Now, this question was a very long one, and I have summarized it just for ease of access to make sure that we all understand the main subject of today's conversation, okay? For the person who sent the question, I hope there are no hard feelings. I just took a lot of personal stuff out of here to focus on the main subject at hand. I hope you don't mind. Anyhow, the question went a little bit like this. How do you find the motivation to get back into writing after a long day of work and minutiae getting in the way of your writing? As I mentioned, there were a lot of other details, and they can basically be summarized around this. You should be writing right now. You have time, you have created the time for writing, and you should be writing right at this moment, or the moment that you allocated, but life has gotten in the way. Whether it is bills, whether it is family stuff, school stuff, friend stuff, the time that you allocated for writing is getting chewed away by other things that are not writing related. So there comes a moment in which you, after a long day of work, you're running around all day, you finally get home, you pay the bills, you take care of all those things, and your time for writing becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. How then does one gain the inspiration to focus on writing after a long day of things not working your way? One of the things that I like to bring forward immediately, and if you haven't, I recommend you go check out one of the earlier Writer's Life vlogs where I talk about my origin story, and I cover how I got here and how I overcame the toughest point in my life and found the drive and the passion to write again. One of the things that I've been pushing forward, and one of the things that I like to offer people in situations like this, in moments, particularly the moments where you should be writing, you are allocated time, you set time away, you arrange your schedule, and you are not writing right now because something came up. And you hate what you're doing, and you hate that you're not writing, and you're doing one of those things that I know seems like a natural response, but it's the sort of thing that is just only going to make you feel worse and worse and worse, and just completely, really easily destroy your morale. You're guilting yourself. Don't guilt yourself. If something happens in life, I like to think about it as the random encounters of life. If you've played a rogue game, or a rogue-like game, roll the dice. What encounter is happening today? Draw a card from the top of the pile. Oh, you have a nice, lovely day today. Or, the internet just died and you have to call the internet service provider. These are all extraneous things. They're outside of writing. They are the random events of life. You have zero control over them. For things like this, for the little things in life that just, or the big things in life that get in the way, that are literally, seriously, outside of writing. It's not that you sat down and you didn't get writing done, it's that you could not sit down to write because something came up. I don't want you to guilt yourself for those things. If something like that happens, it's already gotten in the way, it's already slowed you down. Why guilt yourself? I'm going to tell you something that Max from like 3 years ago probably wouldn't have told you, mostly because situations have changed. I used to be a super big advocate of like write every day. Or like write for your story every day. I write every day, but that's because I keep a diary that allows me to clean my thoughts before I start work. It's part of my daily routine. I sit down, I work out what I'm going to be doing for the day in written form, and I move on. I don't write fiction every day, mostly because that's not how my schedule works anymore. And I used to tell people, especially young writers, that they should write every day, and I found that most of them ended up in situations where real life would get in the way, like exams, or sports, or club activities, and they would start guilting themselves, and they would start hating writing, because instead of looking forward to it, they would think of all of the things that were getting in the way, and I would get messages from them, very similar to the message that I got this week, where they would be like, I really want to write, but things come up, and I feel worse about writing, and I start losing momentum, and I start losing inspiration, and the next thing I know, I don't care about this story anymore, I've lost all momentum. So, over time, I stopped telling people to do that, mostly because I realized that while that saying, that piece of advice, it has its heart in the right place, but I don't think it's a law that everyone has to uphold themselves to. Honestly, I don't anymore. I don't write every day. I allocate time to do chunks of writing, or little chunks of writing here and there, as you could see from last week, but I don't really worry too much. There's an old quote that if you have edited your profile on Tumblr, you have seen before. It's a Confucius quote, and it goes along the lines of, it doesn't matter how fast you go, as long as you don't stop. And I like to come back to this proverb every once in a while, because it's really important to remember that. It really doesn't matter how many days you miss. It really doesn't matter how many words you wrote today as opposed to last week, as opposed to the many words you have to do to complete the book. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that you continue the journey and eventually finish the book. Now, I know that I've been giving you a lot of ideas, but I haven't actually tackled the question, so let's take it from the top. How do I find the motivation to go on with writing after weeks of doing boring minutiae like this week for me, just putting up with random bits of work, doing a lot of editing, which, while it is still creative work, it's not exactly the most exciting. How do I get back into writing with a desire to tell those stories and with the motivation to keep pushing forward regardless of the random events of life? And to that I have a couple of things. The first and foremost is reminding myself that writing, like many other things, it's a journey. And while it seems, and especially when you're in the second act, in the middle of the second act, you may think to yourself, I'm going to be writing this book forever. The answer to that, of course, is no, you're not. It's not going to take forever for you to write this book. It's going to take a while. But there may be times when you write a lot. There may be times when you write very little. There may be times when you don't write at all. All that matters is that you get back into writing and complete the book. I know that this may seem like it's really hard or almost condescending, I guess, to people who haven't finished one book. But trust me, once you complete the journey for the first time, it's like running a marathon. You recognize it and you start to learn and acknowledge, yeah, my morale is low right now because I'm right about the halfway point and life is getting in the way. But once you hit that beginning of the third act and then things just start rolling really quickly, everything feels good. And I know that just telling you keep going, it's gonna get better, doesn't mean a lot to somebody who is dealing with a lot of personal stuff. I understand. And for that I have my second piece of advice. The thing that helped me the most while I was at my lowest, and the thing that still helps me today, and I hate to imply that I use my books as therapy, because I don't really. What I use my books for, I use them to have fun. I use them to play with characters and see what happens to them, and it is almost like having a TV show or an anime that is broadcasted only to me, with a show that is made exactly the way that I want it to, with the pieces that I want it to see, with the sort of a story direction that I'm excited about. And when I sit down to write, I remind myself, why did I start this journey? What did I want to see? And for me, of course, it is always the characters. So when I think that I am at my lowest, and when I've had a really long day of work and I'm like, I was gonna have 2 hours to write, but now I only have like 30 minutes, I remind myself of the core elements that inspired me to create the story. And I hate talking about this because it feels like I'm just pimping my own work, but if you haven't seen my guide to how to plan a novel, I recommend you go check it out, because I talk about this very same idea. I remind myself of the core elements, the things that inspired me, the things that drove me from the very beginning to write this story. And I am refreshed again. I remember, yeah, I wanted to write a story about these dorks going on this ridiculous adventure, and if I only get 30 minutes of that, I'll take it. Because ultimately, I'm not doing this to get famous, I'm not doing this for the money, I'm not doing this to see what people think of me. I'm doing this because I wanted to tell a story that was for me. I wanted to tell a story that was fun for me. And I know that a lot of people don't get that. And I know that a lot of people don't think like that. And that's okay. But when I am at my lowest, and when things seem the hardest, and when time for the thing that I love the most shrinks ever so smaller, I remind myself that writing is a treat, that writing is something that I do because I love it and it is fun. And if I get to do it for 2 hours, great. If I get to do it for 30 minutes, I'll still take it. I won't finish that scene, but I'm gonna get as much as I can of that as possible. And I know that I'm going really long, but it's because I want to give like meaningful advice on this. And there's one more thing. Because we live, right now, at this very moment, we live in a really strange culture where you're told that you should be happy with yourself, but you shouldn't talk about being happy with yourself because that's narcissistic. We live in that sort of culture right now where people are told to look good, but never talk about looking good or being happy because that's selfish. Of course, that culture is bullshit. But we're pushing past that, and I want to inspire you that if you want to write a story for yourself, you want to create that very anime that you love the most, or that you would love to see, do it. Do it. No one can take it away from you. No one can tell you that you should write for a greater audience. Screw that. Write for yourself. Write because it's your time, your effort, your writing. I've met tons of writers in the past, and they particularly disagree with that point, but I'm gonna tell you something that no one else is going to tell you. Those writers have never finished a single book, because eventually they lose momentum. Why? Because they're not doing the writing for themselves. They're doing it as a pathway to gaining something else. Dedicate the writing to you. When all things seem bad, find escape in writing. When all things seem like they couldn't get worse, escape from the world for a little while and experience a story that was made for you. You didn't make it, you found it, and it found you. Experience it. It's a little easier for me because I've come this far and I've talked about it so much that I have come to a point where I can externalize how I feel about it. And I don't expect you to think exactly like I do, as always. Take my advice as nothing more than that, just somebody else's advice. Take it apart, take what you like, toss away what you don't like. Simple as that. What I wanted to take away from this are two things. If life gets in the way, if you reach for the deck of random encounters in life and draw a card that cuts your writing time in half, don't guilt yourself. Because you had no control over the internet going off, you had no control over a random thing happening, you had no control over, your kid getting sick and you having to take him to the hospital, you had no control over any of those things. So don't guilt yourself. There will be more time for writing. And eventually, in time, you will finish that book. It doesn't matter how fast you go or how slow you go, as long as you never stop. As long as you see things through and find completion, it doesn't matter how long it took you to finish that book. It doesn't matter how many bad things happen along the way, because once it's finished, it's finished. And For anyone out there who feels like they have lost inspiration and they don't know what to do, remember to make the story what you wanted to. Remember to make the story what you needed to, and just have fun. Claim it, make it your own, and just have fun. Seriously. I've said this in the past, and I'm gonna say it one more time. People can tell when you're having fun writing. And they can tell when you're not having fun writing. Because if you're just writing to get to the end goal of the finished novel, you're gonna get to the point where a few of my writerly friends are standing right now, where they look at the book that they finished and they're reading it over, several months after, and they tell themselves, wow, I had no fun writing chapter 8. You can tell. I did not enjoy writing this at all. And now I have to put the double work of editing it, cutting it, or rewriting it all over again. Have fun. And unapologetically have fun. You don't owe anybody explanations. You don't have to write what people expect you to. Write what you want. Why? Because you're putting your time, your effort, and your energy into this. You don't need to make explanations to anybody. Your writing, your time, your fun. And this video went very, very, very long. I'm gonna have to cut like half of this. But anyhow, for the time being, I hope that this answered your question, and I hope that if anything, I gave you another point of view. Focus on the writing, okay? Focus on the writing. It doesn't matter how short or how much you get to do every night. Just keep going and don't stop, okay? Okay. For the time being though, I want to know how your week has been. Please let me know in the comments down below. And as always, if you have questions, ideas for prompts, or anything you would like to send my way, leave it in the comments down below as well. For the time being, I want to thank you for watching. Thank you for spending a little bit of your day with me. And I'll see you on the next one. I am sorry for interrupting the middle of this really emotional response about the idea of regaining inspiration in writing, but I thought I heard somebody fighting in the hallway. And no, it's Blakesworth screaming very passionately because he's recording Heroes of the Storm right now. And I must assume that something dramatic is happening because he was screaming at the top of his lungs. Love the guy, love the guy. Anyhow,